extremism. So when you talk about Muslims as hostile to British values,
no,
I've got to say, I don't really. Let me finish what I'm going to say. I don't really see I don't really see how you arrive at that conclusion. And secondly, trying to say to me, actually, you guys are not really like these other guys. I mean, you and I have known each other a long time. Can you imagine how offensive that is to a British Muslim?
In a political moment filled with noise, every now and then something cuts through and demands our attention. And this is one of those moments. Before we dive into the full story, comment where you're watching from and don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Nigel Farage went on Sky News with Trevor Phillips, and his message was loud, clear and deeply troubling. He claimed Muslims don't belong here, that they're the problem, less patriotic, and somehow responsible for Britain's immigration challenges. Trevor Phillips tried twice to give him the chance to rethink or clarify what he was saying, but Farage didn't pull back. He doubled down, repeating the same sweeping accusations against an entire faith community. This isn't thoughtful political debate. This is targeting millions of British Muslims who live here, contribute here and are just as British as anyone else. So when people say Farage doesn't deserve the support of Muslims, or of any level-headed, fair-minded voter, they're simply responding to what he said openly on national television. Let's break down exactly what happened.
And most interestingly, we have a growing number of young people in this country who do not subscribe to British values, in fact, loathe much of what we stand for. So what do you do?
Who are we talking about there?
Oh, I think we see them on the streets of London every Saturday.
What do they look like? Oh, we're talking about...
What do they look like?
Are we talking about Muslims here?
We are. And I'm afraid I found some of the recent surveys saying that 46% of British Muslims support Hamas, support a terrorist organisation that is prescribed in this country. So we've been, and what's interesting is that this Prime Minister is building up far more of that population than anybody before in history.
Well, this is very interesting, and we don't have that survey in front of us, but let's just unpick what you've just said. Are you sure you want to make the blanket accusation that you've just made that Muslims are somehow less patriotic than other British people? Because those people on those demonstrations are British.
Did you watch the recent elections that took place up and down the country?
We don't know that, and we don't know they support Hamas. Would you like to revisit what you said at all?
Let's be clear. There is a growing population of people in this country, a lot of them very young, who have recently been voting for and electing candidates, right, up and down the country, in inner cities, who stand for a set of values that are completely, not only don't subscribe to our values, but in many cases are totally against our values. And the marches, there were some on those marches. Equally, there were lots of upper middle class girls called Jocasta on those marches as well. And I understand that, but we have to face the fact, and at some point, by 2029, the Labour Party will have to face the fact that they started a policy of irresponsible, open-door immigration, but nobody in history has allowed more people in who are potentially going to fight against British values than Mr. Sunak. And if you look at those figures last week, if you look at the sheer numbers that were coming in last week, you really have to ask yourself some questions.
When Nigel Farage lectures the country about British values, he ends up exposing how little he understands those values himself. Because the core principles, democracy, the rule of law, individual liberty, mutual respect and tolerance of different faiths, are exactly what he seems to ignore when the conversation involves Muslims. Then he waves around this mysterious survey. But which survey is he talking about? Many British Muslims watching this have no memory of ever being asked whether they support Hamas. It feels less like evidence and more like a convenient claim to prop up an argument he already wants to make. And when Farage complains that people are voting for candidates who don't share British values, he completely misses the point. In a democracy, voters have the right to choose whoever represents them, even if Nigel doesn't like the outcome. What he calls a threat to British values is, ironically, one of the clearest expressions of those values.
Well, is this the thrust of the reform campaign, that actually immigration means that our values are threatened, and particularly we are unhappy about Muslims, because that is a pretty incendiary proposition.
We have never before seen anything like this. You think about West Indian immigration into Britain, the post-World War II.
I think of very little else.
West Indian immigration into Britain post-World War II. You know, there were a lot of shared things there. Shared history, shared culture, shared religion in many cases. Most families that came could say one of their family had served with British forces in World War I, World War II, love of cricket. You know, the list goes on, but there were commonalities. And, you know, as you know with your previous job, the key to immigration is integration. If you get integration, it works. What we've done is, and this works on several levels. We've done...
I'm going to stop you there, and I'm going to say two things.
Well, here's the difference.
No, I'm going to tell you something about the difference. First of all, you're right, I come from that stock. But let us remember that my stock, my ancestors, for the best part of 700 or 800 years, were Muslims until they were forcibly converted to Christians by slave owners. So when you talk about Muslims as hostile to British values, I've got to say, I don't really. Let me finish what I'm going to say. I don't really see I don't really see how you arrive at that conclusion. And secondly, trying to say to me, you know, actually, you guys are not really like these other guys. I mean, you and I have known each other a long time. Can you imagine how offensive that is to a British Muslim? Let me ask you to put yourself in the shoes of a British Muslim, and can you imagine how offensive that feels?
How many people from your community fail to speak English?
How many people?
From the West Indian community don't speak English.
We all speak English, but actually so do most Indian Muslims, so do pretty much all Pakistani Muslims in this country.
I can take you to streets in Oldham where virtually no one speaks English.
I've been there too. But honestly, come on.
The point I'm making is this.
Seriously.
I am not here to attack the religion of Islam, but I am here...
Well, you've just been doing it for 3 minutes.
No, I haven't. I'm telling you the alarming figures that have been coming out of these recent polls, particularly in the wake of what has happened on October the 7th and in Gaza, and we have a real problem here.
What became crystal clear in that interview is that Trevor Phillips repeatedly gave Nigel Farage the chance to rethink his comments about Muslims. But Nigel never shifted, not once. He stood by every sweeping accusation he made. And here's the double standard. If someone spoke this way about the Jewish community, the outrage would be instant, and they'd be called anti-Semitic. So why is this level of hostility toward Muslims treated as acceptable political commentary? Farage then tries to lean on World War II as part of his argument, completely ignoring the history staring him in the face. Nearly 100,000 Muslims died in World War I, and around 1.5 million served in World War II, fighting for the very freedoms he claims they reject. What became crystal clear in that interview is that Trevor Phillips repeatedly gave Nigel Farage the chance to rethink his comments about Muslims. But Nigel never shifted, not once. He stood by every sweeping accusation he made. And here's the double standard. If someone spoke this way about the Jewish community, the outrage would be instant, and they'd be called anti-Semitic. So why is this level of hostility toward Muslims treated as acceptable political commentary? Farage then tries to lean on World War II as part of his argument, completely ignoring the history staring him in the face. Nearly 100,000 Muslims died in World War I, and around 1.5 million served in World War II, fighting for the very freedoms he claims they reject. So when he insists Muslims haven't integrated or don't belong, he's erasing the sacrifices and contributions that predate even his own political career. The problem isn't the diverse, hard-working people of Britain. The problem is politicians who fuel division and treat entire communities as outsiders in their own country. So when he insists Muslims haven't integrated or don't belong, he's erasing the sacrifices and contributions that predate even his own political career. The problem isn't the diverse, hard-working people of Britain. The problem is politicians who fuel division and treat entire communities as outsiders in their own country.
We want, firstly, numbers on immigration need to be sensible, otherwise everyone's quality of life gets diminished. Diminished in every way. Diminished because you can't get a GP appointment. Diminished because you can't travel anywhere without traffic jams. Diminished because getting on a housing ladder is impossible, because we now need to build one new dwelling every 2 minutes.
I want to get on to
and that's apart from...
I want to get on to politics, but I just want to be absolutely clear, and I want to give you the opportunity to be clear, because everything you've just said suggests that the Reform platform for this election is every problem you face is down to immigrants and, in particular, to Muslims. Is that really what you're saying?
No, actually, most people aren't yet affected by this, because the areas with anti-British values tend to be geographically, at the moment, very tightly concentrated. But they do pose a problem.
But you're not resiling from blaming that community.
I'm blaming elements of that community. I'm not blaming them, I'm stating a fact. All I'm doing is stating a fact. No one else dares tell the truth about this. On the broader question, the biggest single problem this country faces is the population explosion. And it will not be debated in this election. Why? Because Labour started it and the Tories accelerated it.
Okay.
And that has led to problems on a scale that are unimaginable.
Okay, I want to debate that.
When Farage presents these sweeping claims, he dresses them up as facts. But facts require evidence, real data, real analysis, not assumptions wrapped in political emotion. What he's actually revealing is not a statistical truth, but a personal viewpoint about Muslims that he's trying to present as national reality. And that's where the real danger lies. Because when a political figure normalizes this kind of rhetoric, it rarely stops with one community. History shows that once you justify singling out one group, the door opens to targeting others, and suddenly entire minority communities become suspects in their own country. Meanwhile, the actual data we do have points in a different direction entirely. Hate crimes against Muslims have been rising year after year, so the people being portrayed as the problem are, in reality, the ones facing increasing hostility and violence. Anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you want to support the channel, hit like and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next video. Peace out.